In today's video, I wanted to talk to you about the fire element. And the fire element is related to the season of summer. So if you can think of summer, what kind of emotions do you feel? Well, the emotion for fire element is joy. They have a lot of energy and enthusiasm. Summer indicates a time of yang. It means a lot of movement and activity, as opposed to winter where we retreat inside and it's more of a yin energy. And so fire element may appear very confident, and they're a bit like the life of the party, what you would call in the Myers-Briggs personality type as extrovert, but I'll explain the difference between an extrovert and a fire element in a minute. They're also very passionate, and they know how to talk, and they like to talk a lot. So my husband, he's a fire element, and he was sitting in one of his lectures where the teacher was explaining about the elements. And when the teacher did this, there were two people who laughed in his class, and he was one of them. And the teacher explained that only fire element people find this funny. Everyone else just has no idea. And they do. They generally have a lot of fun, and they just find a lot of things funny. And sometimes it's not appropriate, depending on who you're with. And sometimes I don't find his jokes funny. And so we have this in-joke that he tries to explain his jokes because I don't get it, because I'm an earth element. So the fire element has this playfulness about them. And on the flip side, when they're not coping very well with life, or stressful events happen, or there's been trauma, then they can go the opposite way. So if they're well adapted, they have joy and well spirited, and then if they're not coping so well, then they retreat and can be quite depressive and vulnerable and not happy at all. So there's a flip side to the emotion joy, and that can be lack of joy, which leads to sadness, which leads to depression. So the organ that is related to the fire is, the main organ is the heart, and the heart is to do with relationships. So fire elements really value relationships. They seek more intimate and meaningful relationships. So for example, an extrovert in the Myers-Briggs would gain a lot of energy by being around a lot of people. So if they're in a party, they're the center of attention, that nourishes them. That's what an extrovert gets nourished from. Whereas a fire element, even though they have this confidence, even though they are happy and joyful and they want to be with people, it's more the intimacy or the quality of those relationships that matter to them. It's about talking about a problem with a really close friend, and being around family, and being around the genuine love as opposed to the center of attention. So that's the difference. The fire element is very important for them to have be nourished by others close to them. So in saying that, they crave intimacy, and when again, in their childhood, if they've experienced trauma or betrayal, they're going to carry that into adulthood, and they're going to display tendencies of needing this acceptance of love and not thinking that they're lovable. So they will always seek this assurance that they're loved, and that can be a tendency for a fire element. The way to balance the fire is to have the vulnerability enough in yourself and self-awareness enough to expose yourself to being vulnerable with people who you know you can trust and love you. And within that exposure, you start to regain that trust and that you are loved, and really it's ultimately about loving yourself. And that work, that inner work, is really deep for the fire element, because they really crave those relationships. And that if they keep looking externally, that's going to be like a never-ending search to fill something that's inside of them that actually is their responsibility to have that full relationship within themselves. So self-love is very important in that journey for the fire element. Also, they have lots of ideas. Fire people have big ideas, and it can be playful and chaotic and kind of easygoing, but when it comes to the detail, it sort of gets lost, and how they're nourished in their environment is having structure, organization, and discipline. So that really grounds them, and it grounds their energy. So with my husband, he has lots of big ideas, and then I come in and ground that by helping him out with the detail. And I know when he goes on trips away and he comes back, it's really important for him to feel secure and safe and good again coming home when everything's tidy. So I have 3 children, and I'm okay when things are not so super tidy, but he's not. He feels agitated, and it creates more chaos within his energy field. So I, as a gift for him, I do make sure that the house is tidy when he comes home, and then we have a great time and have a good laugh. So that's the fire element. They're pretty easy to spot, but there's a lot of depth in them, and they may be projecting something of a bravado and feel this insecurity inside. And if you wanted to know more about the 5 elements, this is the work that my husband does, and we're more than happy to help. Just comment below and see whether we can help you on your journey.